I think this is the microphone that you get to hear. Um, Again, I'm not sure. I'll find out after this stream ends. I wish you could test it before. Um, but I did link it this time in here. So much is happening. I was just watching things on the deportations. I was watching things on more Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds stuff, and but the deportation stuff, I'm not going to cover anything like that on here. Um, that is, you know, just a lot, a lot. So, but this live video, if you're watching it retroactively, right? That's the word. Um, is going to be primarily kind of exclusively on Rachel Kirkconnell's podcast episode from Call Her Daddy. She was on that podcast today. It got released, um, and talking about this extremely public breakup that it had to be public. Maybe it would have been had to be in public anyways because they had such a huge following and it was about them really, but together a lot of the times. But it was definitely big because of how he announced it. So I'm going to go in a long, I don't know. This, first of all, I just threw on my back about 15 minutes before. Like you can't breathe kind of lower back thing. I've had this happen before, so I'm like, okay, well, hopefully by tomorrow I'll feel better. So that's why I'm a little bit more laid back and I might go a little slower. I might have moments where I'm going to have to like pause and breathe. Of course, people coming in and out, you're not going to know too much, but people who are watching this from the beginning, that's going to happen potentially. And just this one's going to be, I'm going to take my time with this, and doesn't mean that it's going to be longer. It just means that I'm not going to be as rushing and as um, point. One, I want to go through my reaction of the podcast, and then I also want to go through attachment style stuff because I was hearing a lot of things and I have no idea what people are saying. Oh gosh, sorry. I'm just trying to lift my leg. I have no idea what people are saying about him, about her. I mean, most of the people are so loving towards her right now, especially right now. But I picked up on some things that sounded like attachment style stuff that I wanted to talk about. It's at least a good segue. Not diagnosing him. Um, I don't even remember how I posted, but everything that I post, and I'm trying not to get sucked into the clickbait kind of nature, or not even the clickbait, but like the habitual way that YouTube tells you to do your titles, meaning how other people are doing it. And I see the people that get their titles from TubeBuddy recommendations, because I do have that in a separate browser actually. But it does suggest you like how to make it the most compelling, and it gives you a score, what will be most engaged with. And it's funny because I notice myself not clicking on the things that are, you know, this voice note will change everything or whatever. It's like, okay, especially if you just posted it today and it's about Justin's voice note, and that was like 2 days ago. I don't know how to explain it, but my segue into attachment styles, I guess this is something that I've um found a passion for. I've always had a passion for psychology. And so a couple of things to know about me: I love psychology. I got a minor in psychology. I initially had started going to get a major in psychology, and then it's a very long story. I'm not even going to get into it right now. Another time. I didn't, so I just minored in it. And then I recently, a couple of years ago, I had gone back to try marriage and family therapy masters. And it was awesome, but the program was not set up for is it ADA? Like it was not friendly for different ways of learning. It was just reading, and I sank. I sank to the bottom. It was so hard. Not even like sank to the bottom. It was just exhausting. I burned out so fast. It was a lot, but I loved it. So I'm keeping an open mind of finding a program that's kind of equally geared towards practice, but also that is friendly, and it's not here, just read this, and paying so much money to people that are not doing their job. Basically, another story for another moment. But yeah, and I also I'm curious about human relationships, and not just romantic relationships, although the attachment style came from that fascination of mine. And I'm someone who just loves learning, and I'm someone who values growth. And I adopted this word healing now, but basically growth, evolving, being better than I used to be yesterday. And like it's high on my value list. Not everyone has that value list, and it's okay. There's so many different values that every person has as their top. So I love constantly learning languages, just anything. Started painting recently. So when it comes to specific things like in psychology, it's always fascinated me, and I've always gravitated towards it. So yeah, and the other thing where this kind of comes into play is that I want to be one more voice to push humanity forward, to keep moving forward, to keep evolving, to keep doing better than we did yesterday as a whole. And have that compassionate coexisting, um, peace, love, compassion, togetherness. So yeah, um, the podcast. So oh boy, my bad. Oh my gosh, this is so crazy. I can't even like move. So the podcast started with how it all started. How did she end up being on The Bachelor? Her friend submitted her. She didn't really want to, but then they released who it was, and she was attracted to him, so she said, "Okay, yes." When they called her, and they call everyone just a couple of weeks beforehand, so she scurried and went, and they met, and she talks about the process of that. And then after the show, as it was airing, things came out. These pictures came out of her, that they kind of, there was a lot of pressure for them to break up, for him, and people have views and sides to that. And sorry, I'm like so tired and so much pain. And then we get into where are they now? What happened after that? Because we've seen all this social media stuff from them, and we've seen interviews, and they did a couple of like interviews and podcasts. But how did we get here? And what actually happened? Like, does she know about this breakup? What happened? Is there cheating? There's no cheating. And I do believe that, but everyone is going to have their opinion, and only he knows, technically. But I'm gonna go into my little notes here. So, um, I love how she covered when they got back together after the show aired and so forth. I love how she covered that. Yeah, she didn't just say that, yeah, we got back together. She said that they had a lot, both of them had a lot to move on from each other, to forgive and move on. That was the plan, but it's a plan that it's easier said than done. And the power dynamic, I think, was obvious. It's interesting because on the outside we see her and we love her so much, and that she has so many fans just for her. And I almost have said that, not almost, I have said that I almost believe that, why am I saying almost? um she he might lose some followers, not because necessarily they don't like him and how he treated her, that too. I think some followers will be lost or just not engaged with his content because she was really kind of more of the star for a lot of people. And yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. To me personally, his content was boring. And I couldn't really, I didn't care one way or another about his content or him. So I followed him because of her. And I haven't unfollowed him, but yeah, like I don't think even with them being together, I rarely watched his stuff. Um, but she also mentions later on that food was huge for him. It was his career to post about food, where they went, what they ate, you know. And so, but this power dynamic was interesting to hear about, although we kind of saw and we know he was the lead of this show, The Bachelor, and she was one of the contestants. And so she always felt like, why does he love me? Why me when he could have anyone? Um, and she also felt like everyone loved him but hated her, especially because of the controversy around it. So she had these photos resurface um, of her in like a college sorority, I think, party, but it was like I forget what they call it because the way that it was reported was like this plantation party, but I forget the technical term that they used. And with the technical term, you know what I mean. Um and so yeah, so being that he's African American and she's not, and she's having these pictures, that was huge. And I think that's where, because it wasn't specific necessarily, but I think that's where she felt this like everyone hates me but loves him. And also because he's the lead on top of everything else. And some people had other favorite girls, you know, so there's that layer as well. But I think with them specifically, that was a huge, it had like, because she felt bad, she has a conscience and she felt so bad and it took a toll on her. And I think that added a lot to that dynamic where she felt less than him, and she, especially to the public and in the public's eye, and undeserving to be there. So at least as she says, like that was like mainly the first year or just that first year. And then um the living together was interesting because yeah, she said she describes the first 2 years as, you know, just like casual, nothing too serious. Although she didn't really like saying it that way. So much fun dating, not worried about marriage or where it's going, etc. Just like a no rush, normal relationship. And then the third year she started, Dave Neal called this. He called this. She started asking herself and him, like, where is this going? It didn't have to be tomorrow or this year or whenever, but like she wanted to know that he was serious and he had that, you know, end goal of marriage that she had. And this is kind of where I guess it didn't necessarily break down, but I think, you know, looking back now, probably she said nothing that sounded like he suddenly started being different. It just, the actions weren't there. He started saying like, yeah, he wants that. And he also was posting comments on people's comments to his posts or her posts, and saying to even them like it's coming, the engagement and the wedding venue and food and babies and all this stuff. And in interviews and on his channel, on his YouTube channel, they talked about that. And he was talking to her about that behind closed doors too. So there was always that conversation, she was saying, that was there. Um, and yet the actions, looking back now, she says that the actions weren't there. They weren't coming. It was just more talk than action in regards to that. So but that's not why they broke up either. Not, at least not directly or how she says it. So, um, was that kind of ultimately, yeah, I guess because that was kind of part of the conversation that they had at the end too. But um, anyways, but she talks a lot about, or she talks about living together, and it's interesting because they had the ability to to like live not bi-coastally. What Morgan, someone said like bi-coastally, but referring to like, as I forget her name, to New York or Miami or whatever. Um, but like they had the ability. He kept his New York and Miami apartment, and she kept her Georgia house or apartment place. But she said that they spent yeah, it's probably the time of the lives right now. Everyone's getting off work on the eastern side at least, and yeah, a lot of people are going live probably. Um, it's crazy. We're in a crazy world right now. Um, and yeah, so he had most of his stuff at her place in Georgia, so that was basically home base. And when they weren't traveling, that's where they were staying. So even though she says that he described his reasoning for not living together as part of like being religious and having that kind of mindset, wanting to live together only after they get married. um yeah, they were, as she said too, like they were living together. Basically, they would travel all the time and they would be together, they would stay in the same room, all that stuff, and he would stay over her place. Just based on what I saw on their like social media throughout the years, like she, I think, also stayed over his place at times. But it's interesting because these people are so, he at least is so rich that to be able to do that, it's a little different than the rest of us, I think. So this whole living together gets like murky, and she even said that they always had, hi Arnaldo, am I saying your name right? And Maria Rodriguez. And I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing them wrong. Um, and Angel too. Sorry, I didn't say hi directly to you. Um, so she said that even she thought it would be good to have for each of them to have, or like to have multiple homes, multiple home bases, multiple apartments, places. So she didn't think of it, but now I think what I heard was she's questioning if she was making excuses for him. Awesome. And I think when you look back, it's easy to say, well, that's a flag I missed, or I saw it and I ignored it, or um, you know, I was making excuses, or other people telling you that. But at one point in this whole thing, she was talking about how you're partnering up with someone, you love someone, so you want to make sure they're okay, just like you assume you rightly expect for them to also feel the same way about you. And so it's like this coexisting, this like good faith building kind of stuff. So I people aren't perfect, and they had from the beginning not a common relationship. It didn't start in a common way, in an average way. They were on national US TV, and they had this up and down start to their relationship. Also, on top of that, there was so much to it and so much pressure for him as well, around that specific time, because it was around the George Floyd parts and things. And so it was a lot. It was a lot at that first like year or two, and then after that they were so public and everyone wanted to see more of them and all this stuff. It was a lot. So, and having so much money, they went, all over the place. So I don't think personally that she was necessarily making excuses. It's easy to say when you look back, I was making excuses, but you don't know what you don't know in that moment. And every relationship is unique and different, and um yeah, you just do your best and to navigate, and so anyways, but as I was saying, like, they were talking about marriage and kids, and he was saying everything. And I don't remember if it was over here that she said that, yeah, a few months before now, he told her to start saving like inspirations and that they'll go look at rings. And he was talking about the wedding food and like the venue and stuff. And I don't know the host's name from Call Her Daddy, but she asked like, were there any patterns when he would have engaged in these conversations? Like, I think she was basically asking, did he bring this up when you wanted to leave, or did he bring this up when you were upset, or when this happened, or whatever? Was there a pattern to that? And she said, not that she thinks about it. She was even talking about it more than he was. The only thing that she noticed was that um, there was there were no actual actions behind the words. And um, I forget which one said this. Hold on, sorry. Uh, okay, well, I can't really move too much. Anyways, I forget which one of them said this, but either the host or Rachel, but it's talking about how it's hard to break that power dynamic once it's kind of settled. And after, 3, 4 years, it's definitely you're settled in that power dynamic where he's kind of the leader. It's more what, you know, one person has more say in where the relationship is going, or where it's at, or what they're doing, or whatever. And she was waiting kind of for him also from the standpoint of the guy proposes and all that stuff, which I guess, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, so that dynamic was there, and it was pretty solid, and it was hard to break into an actual partnership where she had equal say and an equal voice. And not because he was like this controlling person and it was all just like horrible and he's a horrible person and all that stuff. This is not the Blake Lively whole thing with, because that's a whole other thing. I think they were two normal people that um it relationships are hard. And yes, they were a lot more public than most normal people, but I think it wasn't anything crazy. So, but that power dynamic is an interesting one because it is, yeah, it is very hard. As far as I know, it is very hard to break into a partnership. um Whoever is that, leader and the follower. And so I put my first question, like, is it a man's decision to propose? Should it be? I think it's such a loaded question. It's such a bigger question because there's so many assumptions, so many things that go into saying that and to making a decision of yes, it should be, and it is, or it shouldn't be, and it's not. Because there's the assumption that men are the one that are more indecisive, that need to be convinced. But then also, actually, from Justin Baldoni's first The Wayfair, um the few men around the table conversation episodes, in that first episode of that, I they talked about not exactly this, well, I maybe kind of this proposing thing, but the expectation that men are taught about marriage, that it's like the ball and chain, the wife, and that it's you're losing when you get married. Men are often taught that they will lose their freedom, this, that, blah, 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 blah. It's like a losing thing. And so it goes into that too. And I think that's why this whole thing of, the man has to propose because he needs to, the idea, this is my impression, that he needs to come to terms like that he loves you that much that he's willing to like sacrifice all the other stuff, which is not true. But there's so many connotations that go into this. Should the man propose, or should the man's decision be the ultimate decision of proposal and marriage and stuff, or can the woman suggest that or propose herself or whatever? And I think as a whole, we're still, even me, I remember having this conversation actually. We had this like years ago, and it's like, I can't even imagine proposing to someone like, but I think the dynamic in their relationship also was huge to this, because she was waiting for him to give the confirmation that he wanted that with her, and because she never felt completely secure in that, which is, to me on the outside, crazy from what we see. They were traveling together all the time, and the way that he spoke about her, and like this one interview, he was like touching her, like um it was just like, it's so hard to imagine, but people are deep. They're deeper. They're the iceberg, kind of deep. Um, yeah, Maria, I was raised that a man should be the one to propose. Yeah, I mean, I think pretty much all of us were. Um, in like the European and the Americas. I don't know so much about the African countries' culture and the Asian countries' culture of that, around that, but I think as a like majority, it is more patriarchal, the word, sorry. And it is kind of more like the man proposing, and the history of marriage is interesting. Well, I'm not going to get into that because I need to do a lot more research before I can speak to that, but I what I keep hearing and understanding and learning about that, it's like it's a lot. So there are reasons that are like just habits at this point. um, and then again, with them specifically, it made sense because she always felt smaller and less. And like, not because he made her feel that way, like, oh, hold on. For those joining my back, I threw out my back. So, um, like and this is complete speculation. I don't think he was necessarily seeing her that way, that she was less and smaller. And I don't even think that he was necessarily thinking that he needs to make all the decisions and all that stuff. But I think there are like subconscious forces, at play, which part of it is the attachment style that I'll get into it after just kind of covering the reaction and, what happened. So, um, I forget. Wait. Oh, the host asked if Matt ever expressed doubt about marriage, in these 4 years, or was it just now, just suddenly, this breakup or whatever. And she said that at times she definitely felt that it seemed to her that he had weight on him regarding marriage, and she couldn't tell if it was because she wasn't his person, he didn't like her enough, or there was something wrong with her, especially according to him, or if it was just something like a commitment phobia, or she didn't say this commitment phobia, but if it was something in him, with him, that he needed to work through, that had nothing to do with her. And she still to this day was saying that she still doesn't know. And uh if they argued, she was asked, and she said they barely argued. Um, but that's also like relative, right? To because they did argue, and she talks about some arguments. But I guess maybe she or both of them had a healthy outlook on arguments. Like, yeah, they happen, and unless it's like a fight, it's like you snap at each other a little bit or whatever. Um, but yeah, she says that they barely argued. She kept trying to remind him when they did argue that they're a team and the issue is out there, and how can we fix it together? We're on the same side. And I remember seeing a podcast with her where she goes into this, when she talks about this. She is so wise, especially for her age. She has so much wisdom when it comes to this, especially, I mean, not her age only, but like, because she didn't have um she was saying like this is her first real serious relationship and stuff. So yeah, she's pretty incredible. And it was an interesting dynamic when they did argue, and this is kind of what happened. Fast forward sort of to this breakup, the 24 hours, 48 hours of the breakup, because she I'll talk about the dynamic first that she mentioned. When she was upset or emotional, she would cry or something. He would consistently tell her out to that he'll give her space, as if that's what she wanted. And I love that the host asked, like, was that what you wanted though? And she's like, no, I wanted to be comforted. That was like support. That's how I felt supported, and that's what I needed. I needed him to be there, not leave me, you know. To like calm down and talk, like there's benefit in that. And that's when it clicked into my mind, this whole attachment style. I think that was like my first like, oh, light bulb, my first light bulb went off with that. So because she also talks later, like he cares about her, he cared, like he wasn't insensitive to her, but it sounded like he couldn't deal with emotion and someone being emotional, um especially like okay, so much to say at the same time. I always feel that way. Anyways, so she also talks, quickly before I get into the breakup, she also talks in this dynamic of when they did argue or when they were at odds. Um, they would take a breather apart and then talk about the problem and so forth. And they learned how to, they learned how to, I like how she gets on my hair and she gets mad at me. Um, they learn how to take these breathers at times and ask themselves, like, what is the actual problem, what am I actually upset about, instead of like, I'm upset at you, you did this wrong or whatever. But it's interesting because she was asked who apologized usually first. Was there one person more than the other? She didn't say who'd apologize first, but she did say something interesting, which is by the end of it, she would be the one usually apologizing, even if she felt slighted or not slighted. Um, she felt justified, I guess. She didn't use these words, but she felt justified. What I was hearing from what she was saying, justified in her being irritated with him, or maybe even angry. She was really nice saying irritated. And yet at the end of the discussion, she would be the one apologizing. And people can take that a number of ways, but again, I there's like, and I, again, not diagnosing him or her or anyone, but like the segue, the, starting point, whatever, I forget the word, of, this attachment style, because people can take this, and it depends so much when you're looking and analyzing your situation, your own situation, or from the outside, even, which is caution on the outside, like I'm doing now. But there's multiple things, not everything, some things can fit into multiple categories. And so this of her ultimately being the one apologizing, I saw as comments in the Justin Baldoni case stuff, and how, him apologizing set this like memory of this one commenter talking about, um basically like manipulation. Based on all the other pieces of the puzzle that we have, I don't believe that's what was happening here. But she said that at one point she felt crazy, which is an interesting choice of words, because it ended up being that, I think what she was referring especially was like at the end, he was telling her, like, you never take accountability and say sorry. And she's like, but that's exactly what I do all the time. And so it was this like, which often happens in relationships and couples, or like in dynamics of two or more people, is different people perceive things differently. And she said maybe he was referring to, not actually understanding what he was bothered by or what the problem was from his perspective. Yeah, it could be. Or it could be that he sincerely didn't see her accountability and apologies. Um, I think relationships now seem more difficult. They fall out of love more often now. Yes, right? It is so difficult to be in a relationship right now. Not just like breaking up, but even inside the relationship, I feel like we're also lost. We don't know what's going on. And I think part of it is because we know more. My grandmother used to say a lot when she was here, like living with us. She would say so much, like, you, this young generation knows too much. Like, it was just, it's simple. You're complicated, overcomplicating things. But I think that's a good thing. I think the more we know, the better and healthier relationships we have. But I think right now it is kind of a mess. I think it's like we know more, but we don't know what to do with that necessarily. And for sure, we probably likely were not taught a lot of that, so we don't know how to fit it in. Yeah. Let me know, guys, what do you think about that? But yeah, it is. I think it's hard. Relationships are hard. And yeah, getting to the marriage part, getting to the stability stage. I forget if that's exactly the name, but yeah, it's tough. But yeah, but I did find that very interesting that by the end of it, she would be the one ending up apologizing and taking accountability, even if she wasn't the one in the wrong, or she had started the whole thing because she was irritated at something that he did. And this happens, perhaps genderized, but I think it happens a lot. We do that a lot as humans. So she was asked why was she so quick to take accountability in the arguments, even if she wasn't the one wrong in the wrong. And she said because he was so adamant that she wasn't doing that. But it sounded at first that she said he told her that she doesn't take accountability and so forth later. So again, this was a pretty quick podcast and not so detailed. It was detailed, but we also don't know so much, and we may never know. Probably don't know, and I don't think we need to know. Again, this is like a step ladder or whatever. Gosh, I can't think of the word, to like bigger conversations, in my opinion. And yeah, and you try to do what you can to fix what your partner finds wrong. Yeah, like, in a good and healthy relationship, you have to figure things out. What triggers someone, you have to be considerate of each other. And it's not doing their work or like excluding them from doing their work. But you have to be considerate, and you have to keep in mind, there was a Blackish episode actually that covered this, where it was beautiful because they kind of fast forward, like, what if I just blow up now? And then by the end of the episode, I think, and they would just get into these like fights, and by the end of the episode, that were unfair and way just dirty, just very painful, because they knew, having been married so long, they knew exactly what would hurt the other person. And so you have that choice where you can say that thing that will hurt the other person or do that thing, or you can have the choice to not. And it's different. Like, compromise is different than sacrifice. And that is different than like just ignoring problems or letting things like slide through or whatever. But sometimes, yeah, some things, I don't know, it's just like working with that stuff, with that in mind, of being compassionate and considerate, and that this person isn't perfect, you're not perfect, and you need to figure things out together. So which she had that mindset. I don't know if he had that mindset. We also don't know that much from his side because he's not talked about this yet, and I don't know if he will talk about this. Um, but that's good to keep in mind too. So, another point, I'll say, okay. I what do you call that when you spoiler 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 to my own life. This, especially this point, made me think, I think this is a classic dismissive, avoidant, anxious attached. Although she was pretty secure, but she at least started leaning that way. And the reason I say that, because she comes off so secure. She would, when they weren't together and he cheated, she like, I think she blocked him, or at least like she said no, like can't be together, can't get back together or whatever until he was in Atlanta. This was like way at the beginning. Like she seemed pretty secure even with this breakup and stuff. But she says this: she would go into the conversation irritated with him, and she would leave worried that he would leave or, break up with her basically or whatever. And I thought that was like, that's anxious attachment. Well, that's not anxious attachment, sorry. That's one potential thing. And it was this pattern that she felt like she wasn't enough, and that she needed to, we'll go into the Japan part of it too. Like she needed to make sure that he was okay and that she wasn't enough for him, or always worried. And we didn't see that from the outside, but yeah, and she would always apologize in the end and so forth just to keep the peace, and yeah. I don't think, yeah, anyways. Um, they were together, yeah, 4 years. They, I think 20 September 2020, yeah, September 2020 is I think when they were filming the Bachelor season that they were on, and then January, February, March, whenever, December, I forget when it aired. That's when they were like, together behind the scenes until the photos came out and they broke up for just a few months, I think. By the summer, I think they were back together. Um, and so they've been together since 2021. Yeah. Um, yeah, they are young, and yeah, and that's the thing. Like I think this is like the thing. Everyone, and what I wish she would know, and she probably does, but everyone has their own journey. Even with this breakup, how she handles it, it's her own way of handling it, and how they handle it together, it's their own way. They're, yeah, people are sometimes together without being married forever, sometimes for a longer time, sometimes there's just so much. But in their case, it kind of sounds, like the decision to break up was pretty much in the heat of the moment, in a way too, and in a very stressful moment. And I don't think they're getting back together, at least not now. I don't know, will they in like years from now? I don't know. But I don't know. There's theories. My one friend says that he never cared for her as much as she cared for him. Like she loved him, and clearly you can see and hear and just everything, she loved him. Um I think sometimes it's harder for us to see men loving, especially if they are, and I'm not saying he is, but if he is dismissive avoidant, or he's not showing it, or he has commitment phobias, commitment things, um, that can look like he doesn't love her. But what I saw was that he really cared for her. He really does love her. So, but yeah, this conversation with marriage, but it's her timeline too. If she feels like, okay, 4 years, we need to figure this out. Don't waste my time, because that can also happen, right? Sometimes it can be a waste of time. But it's interesting that they say that, because I don't understand. If they were pretty much like together all the time, it's hard for me to understand where the waste of time is. It's not like they were on and off and they weren't seeing each other that much. They were always traveling together, always together, and even technically living together for, days, weeks, maybe even months at a time. So I don't know. Was this like a young kind of breakup, a young relationship breakup of like, oh, well, we need to cross that like married checklist thing? And I don't know. But, the way that he said, well, I don't know. I feel bad for both of them. I feel like they really did. and do still, because it doesn't just like cut off. I think they do still love each other very much. I think it's genuine there. So it's just sad. But yeah, anyway, so the breakup happened in Tokyo. They had gone to England because everyone's like, well, he just posted them in England and now, a few hours, 5 hours, they're broken off. But it is delayed, which good for them because yeah, as influencers, as public figures, yeah, I would say don't post right away where you are. Um, so she met him in London, then they flew to Tokyo because they had these expiring vouchers, and she loves Japan. And so they're talking about engagement again right before that trip, and everything was great. And she still doesn't know if he thought ahead of about breaking up with her, like if it was someone on his mind more than just that day, or was it that exact day. And my understanding of that is like she's not saying that he planned it all along, but was he having more and more doubts that she wasn't aware of? Or did it really, was it just the heat of the moment? He got upset, he got triggered, in my words, triggered, etc. And boom. The night before, she was feeling overwhelmed. They were trying to find a place to eat. She was trying to find a place to eat for them to have like a good spot, because the place that they planned on going was closed. And she was describing this pressure that she felt, that it's his career to share these, stories and photos and whatever of food finds, basically. And I find that so odd because, hold on, I need to shift a bit. um, I found that odd, not always, but I found that odd because how many of us have that lifestyle where we travel so much? How is that a viable, like, business, I wonder? Like, as an influencer? Or is it just because people are watching your content and you get money off of that? I don't know, but, like, these businesses, they're not gonna get that much audience unless it's, like, somewhere in London where you have a lot more population density that could potentially watch his stories. But, it's an interesting career choice, but she described this pressure that made her feel so overwhelmed in trying to find a good spot. She asked him if, like, you know, he had any ideas or something. And he, I guess, was doing something else, and said, no, it doesn't matter, not a big deal. And then she put so much pressure on herself, and she had started her period, she said. And I like how, like, empowerment, evolution, she didn't even blink when she said that. I still feel uncomfortable saying stuff like that publicly, like, to the whole world. And then she chose a place, and it ended up being bad, or in her opinion. And so she felt like she disappointed him. Now they're like, it was a lot of emotional charge that it doesn't seem, in her recollection through the years, she doesn't really seem like she was as aware of. But to feel that anxiety all the time, or like so much to this level, yeah. Like, I do wonder why she felt that much pressure. Was it because he put it on her? Like, were other conversations in the past him caring if she chose a bad spot, or did he chose any of the spots, or, like, all these questions. But yeah, she was saying that she was tired, cranky, emotional on my period, feeling terrible, overwhelmed with looking for a dinner spot for an hour. She was looking for an hour for it, and we get there, and it was a disappointment. So she teared up. I like how she counted her tears. She's like, 1, 2, 3, or like 1, 2, 3. And then she like stopped, and she just kind of composed herself. And she said that, like, they didn't talk at all, apparently. Maybe they did say, like, enjoy your food or whatever, who knows. But she said that they didn't talk at all, and in the past, this was the pattern, was he would let her be emotional, process her emotions, and then, tell him when she was ready to talk calmly. that is such a huge poster for dismissive avoidant. Just a minimizer also for those who know imago therapy too. Um, just a poster for it. And that's not, so he wasn't doing it, again, as far as we know, as far as these like this conversation speculations and all that stuff, and like a trampoline, bounce board, those like boards at the pools, like a jumping board, I don't know, into the conversation with the attachment style. Like, yeah, that's a big one. That's a big dismissive avoidant like alarm, a neon sign. And not doing it from like a mean place, but really like you process your emotions, like you get yourself, together, and then we can talk calmly. Because dismissive avoidance don't know how to like handle emotion. They don't know how to process that as a survival mechanism. That's how they learn to survive. And yeah, so it's so much going into that. And that's why I wanted to do this from my perspective, not to like, oh, everyone's talking about this, or so many people are talking about this, and I'm just another voice. But I feel like this probably is not going to be very said, this angle of attachment style. I think people will label him as different things than that, much like kind of bad things. And I don't think that's fair. But again, we don't know. I don't know him. They don't know him, the people who will. And some people might not go either way. But I just felt like it's important because it's a conversation. It's something in psychology that I haven't heard enough. We go to like the most extreme labels, and we miss all the stuff that's like workable, pretty much. So, anyways, so he let her have, in her words, she said that in the past, if she had a meltdown, another sign for me that it was like a dismissive avoiding, like being emotional is a whole meltdown. He lets her move through her emotions and get it all out of her system, and then, let him know when she's ready to talk. So they didn't talk over the dinner. And she was so upset because she knew it was something so important to him. So she took that on to herself, that was something so important to him. And if it was important to get good content, and it was like for both of them, they post this content, but primarily he's like the foodie poster. And she feels like she disappointed him, or she was worried. um yeah, thank you. I That's a good idea. I do have a warm pack for my back. Yeah. And I have to start dinner. Okay, cool. What are you making for dinner? Let us know. And then relationship cold feed maybe. Yeah, that's what it kind of makes me think. But deeper than just well, I mean, what is cold feed, right? But I think it's deep where he's not aware of what he's afraid of with relationships. This is my take on this, that he's afraid of relationship itself, of marriage itself, not necessarily of her. And I think that's why they lasted so long. One, because she was so accommodating of him. Um, and also because I think he did love her. And also, I mean, this sounds weird, but like he saw her value. He valued her so much and cared and liked her and wanted to be with her. And that's why he was. And they were together often, right? All the time, pretty much. But I think he couldn't get past that commitment part, because this was also on the show too, on The Bachelor, with his dad, that he was brought up by an only mom, like an only mom. Like what do you call that, like lasagna and mixed salad. Ooh, can't have tomato sauce, but that sounds good. And thank you for letting us know. um and yeah, and so I think that's, in my opinion, what kind of is going on or went on. And I think her, in all her right, she pushed like, so where is this going? What are we doing? I think also there were arguments that they didn't have I remember reading about this. Like, if you don't have arguments, um, well, not that if you don't have arguments then you have to argue with your partner, but if you have things that you should be arguing about, but you're not arguing just to keep the peace, which she seems like she was doing sometimes at least, or at least like it wasn't resolving because she ended up just dropping it and saying sorry, then it seems it gives you the illusion that you solved the issue, but it wasn't solved. So it stays there and it comes back, or it just kind of infects everything else. And so, and that's kind of also what it sounds like happened because so getting ahead of myself. So she had this meltdown and they didn't talk, and then they went to the hotel room, I think, after that. Oh no, they got in the car. No, sorry. Hold on. Yeah, they went back to the hotel like it was okay, and she gave went to give him a big hug or a hug. And sorry, my bullet points were yeah. And oh, where am I? Oh, okay. She says that he found it concerning that she made such a big deal out of it. Because she went for the hug and he wasn't very comforting. Like he probably was just like, okay. And then she asked if he was mad, and he was confused why she was so upset that, about the food situation. And she said that she felt like she let him down. And he kept saying that it wasn't a big deal, but he's concerned why she got so upset. Like he felt like, yeah, but that wasn't a big deal. The food thing wasn't a big deal. But why did you get so upset over this food not being, good or whatever? And he found it concerning that she got that emotional. I love the choice of words again, just for the topic of attachment style. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not like happy for them or the situation. I smile because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is almost by the book. And to have sort of that idea kind of in a way lessens the severity of stuff and of human experience. But yeah, if he was saying if she gets that emotional about little things like this, what is going to happen in life when something really terrible happens? Like, how are you going to be able to react to things that are actually really scary or disappointing or sad? And it hurt her to hear that. She felt like she was being punished for crying and was just confused by his reaction. Because in the past, he again would give her space. And that's when they got into the whole conversations like, well, but did you actually want space? She's like, no. But he was, it sounds like he was more soothing still, even with that giving space, but this time because she was confused by his reaction, this time, like, it was something different, like, she felt different, like something was different. And, they went to bed, and he, said, it's okay," like, and so everything was okay the next morning, um, and they went to this like mart to get food. This those places where she went in the end because they got into something else, but he went to get matcha, she went to find some gifts for her friends. And but she says before this that a few days before he told her how lucky he was to have her as her partner, the qualities that he loves in her, comparing other this is like this is my note. He was comparing other relationships how they need to put up with so much, and how lucky he is that he doesn't, or they don't, like they have like this nice relationship. But again, I wonder if that part was because they were not actually having the conversations and having the arguments that were needed to have, you know? So he said to her that he feels so lucky that he gets to call her his partner. I've said this before. I've felt this before, like a long time ago. I've been in exactly this, like when I would watch, like, oh, I'm so glad that's not us, kind of thing. And yeah, that's tricky. Be careful with that one because no one is perfect and no relationship is perfect. And just because what you're seeing is perfect or imperfect on the outside, you don't know what's behind closed doors. And again, I think that I love hearing therapists and other people that, are coaches, relationship coaches and stuff talk about, like, no, it's healthy to argue, it's healthy to fight, and it can be very hard. Like, we need to have this reality of it's not, rainbows and sunshine, and arguments are not that easy. They're not painless. Um, so yeah, but I wonder why. I wonder if that was part of what he was saying. Um, and yeah, so back to, sorry if that was yelling. So they went to get food and she was scrolling through her phone and showing him a bunch of videos, and it seemed like it bothered him or annoyed him because he kind of snapped at her and then she got mad at him. This is after later she said that it was like 3 weeks of them traveling together, and although they've been together and it's kind of usual for them to travel, it's still a lot. I mean, not because not only traveling, but they went literally to the other side of the world. They went from like London, England to Tokyo, Japan, and I don't know if they spent 2 weeks in Japan or 2 weeks in London or like all the 3 weeks. I don't know, but like, yeah, and, who knows what was going on with him too, like, maybe he was, like, stressed about something, maybe she was, like, it seems like, yeah, at this point, they were, like, anything was going to set them off, or especially him, I guess, I don't know. Well, her too, because she got emotional, so, like, something was, like, in the air, and, so, yeah, she got mad at him and basically felt like, which is true, like, even if she's annoying him, hey, don't treat me like that. So they were both mad at each other. They go into this market to find food. And also, at first they split up, which wasn't normal to split up, she said. And yet she wasn't scared, didn't seem like a big deal. And she was actually just annoyed. Um, like, okay, we got into this, whatever. And then after they got food, they got in the car. And then she was really quiet. So he asked why she was being so quiet. And she said because she felt like he was so irritated and irritable right now, so she was basically just avoiding saying anything unnecessary that might set him off, because he's annoying, and just giving him his space, which, that's what he likes to do for her too. And I think that's a good, especially when people are irritated or angry, although it can be hard for some of us. Because I'm definitely the type, like, let's just figure this out now. But yeah, it's especially with anger. When people are crying, generally, I think this is the thing. If someone's sad, if they went beyond the anger, because anger oftentimes is like being hurt, but placing it on the outside. If they went straight to the emotion, the root emotion of being sad, of being hurt, comfort them, be there for them, be there with them, and finding in yourself, in that moment to, center yourself enough to do that. If they're angry or irritable, I mean, yeah, it depends, but most of the time, yeah, like just, yeah, give them some space. Still be there for them, or no, don't be there for them. Go walk, they walk, or be in the same space. It depends. It's relative to the moment, but yeah, but I guess he didn't like that because everything came out. And yeah, he seemed overwhelmed and took it out on her. He took something out on her. I don't know. We don't know what their life was, what their experience was. My one friend speculates that he like liked someone else or was starting something else with someone else or wanted to. And so that's why he just, broke up with her this fast. Until we know more, I have a completely opposite stance on that. I don't think there was anyone else. I don't think he saw someone else and he's like, let me hurry up and find faults in this relationship. The other thing with dismissive avoidance is also they find faults with their partner. The more they care, actually, the more they're like fault finding. So, yeah, but it just doesn't seem like it lines up at this point. And she was so adamant to say that she doesn't believe it was cheating, there was anyone else. And it sounds a lot more like pent up stuff. And in a moment where they were irritable for one reason or another. And it was like they had enough, kind of. And so she was saying that, excuse me, they skipped lunch and because they just kept like walking and went back to the hotel and just talked the whole time and how everything came out. Excuse me. And he said at the end of the day, qualities about her he worries about having in a wife, which is, yes, we can take a moment to say that's hurtful, that's mean and hurtful. We can also take a look and see that he was speaking his truth at that time. I think that's kind of interesting because he was applauding or whatever, valuing her um, qualities a few days, 2 days, 3 days before. And suddenly she has these other qualities, or were they even the same qualities that he didn't like? But I think, again, I think this phrase, him saying this came from, I think he was constantly trying to be with her. And I think he's unaware of the fears he has that this, and I'm reading into this with this lens of attachment style, but this is what I'm reading into this, that he he's fault finding throughout their relationship. He's probably not saying that to her. It didn't sound like it sounded like her insecurities didn't come from what he was saying, but more from just her own like fears, or maybe like he wasn't acting all the time a certain way. Says later it was like pulling teeth to get him to come to weddings with her, or, do things that were important to her. But she was right there, all packed when it came to his stuff. And people will have very emotional responses to that. But yeah, there's a lot to that too. So I think that he was in and out trying to convince himself rather than deal with what was behind him not wanting to commit to her. And so I think it turned into villainizing her in his mind. Like, no, it's actually you. You're having these qualities that I don't like. Like, you're emotional. You're too emotional. And, what if like we have, children and this happens and you're not going to be able to control your emotions or whatever. That's kind of what it sounds like to me. Um, and I don't know. So, but it is absolutely like really hurtful and mean to say. But both things can be true, that he wasn't, you know, a poop head. He was just speaking his truth in that moment. That's how he felt in that moment. Um, it wasn't like vulnerable truth. It wasn't like the actual root of it, I think. But yeah. And then so he mentioned or she mentioned that basically it sounded like he was suddenly saying that they're incompatible, and that she wasn't taking accountability again. And that was like the main thing for him, that she never takes accountability and says sorry. Um, Super interesting. That is a huge him problem. That is something that he needs to look into. That, like, why does he feel that way? So interesting, because seeing her, we don't know these people true, but seeing her, you can see, like, I'm sure she maybe didn't say all the time, although she says she did say sorry all the time and took accountability. But like, it's interesting that's his main thing, and that he should want to propose to her by now after 4 years, and he should be ready, but he's still not ready Doesn't know if he ever sees himself proposed to him or even married to her. That was an ouch. Okay. Oh boy. And then, oh, oof, sorry. Back needs to settle in. And she told him after 4 years, yeah, he should know. And if he doesn't know, that's not a good thing. We probably shouldn't be together if you don't feel like that, because we know each other better than anyone else. Um, and then again, she brings up this idea, this like question that she has: was it me or him, or are you scared? And he said that he didn't think that she was his right person. He didn't want her resenting him by wasting more of her time if it didn't happen. So, oh gosh, this is so interesting. Let me read the comments before. Oh boy. Uh, I've gotten used to the signs my boyfriend gives out to give him space or talk about it. We've been together for almost 2 years. Yeah, you do. That's awesome. Not everyone does. Sometimes it's hard to get in that rhythm and figure out, like, okay, this is when, do you guys live together? And also, too bad this happened late in their relationship, but it would have been worse in the long run. We don't know. We don't know. I think it depends on how much they could air things out. And it seems like to this point, they probably weren't working through the things. That's what it seems like to me. And so if they would have instead, like, okay, let's go to couples therapy, or let's like explore this. Let's sit down with each other. What do you want? What do I want? If he was feeling comfortable enough to go to her, hey, these are the things I don't like, in our relationship. This is what hurts me that you do, or this is why. Like, if he would have taken the time to reflect on why he is bothered by these qualities that we don't know what they are, but these qualities in her that makes him not see her as his wife, or that bother him, and this whole accountability that she apparently to him she doesn't take. If he would be honest with himself, sit down and explore, like, why am I feeling this way? And it's hard also if you're used to doing it yourself, if you have studied psychology or whatever, you might be able to do it yourself, or if you're just introspective and you're good at that and you're used to, you have that rhythm, or you've been to coaching before, or like therapy before, and you have these tools in your toolbox, great. But sometimes people don't have that. I don't know where he lands on there. That's why it's like easier when you go to therapy and um have this other person kind of point out your patterns and things that you might be missing about yourself, and the questions that you might be avoiding asking yourself, and so forth. So, yeah, would it have been better or worse in the long run? We don't know, because it could be both. It literally could have been both. It depended on how they chose to take this moment, which they chose to take it as a breakup. He chose to take it like, no, I choose to break up in this moment, instead of, because she even said, like, do you want to keep working on this? Because if you do, then cool. Well, I'm here. But if not, then just let me go, and yeah, I just so wonder. I wish that we could hear from him, like, authentically. Sometimes I wonder with him, because he puts a very social media persona on social media. So I think it's hard for us to know his authentic self. But I wonder with him, like, what was going on in his life, in his mind, in his body, that those days, those like 2 days, or especially that day, he said a lot of hurtful things. Yes, we say a lot of hurtful things anyways when we're fighting, when we're breaking up with someone that we regret, as he regrets, or he definitely regrets the post. And some of this is like, it's just like so interesting. It's so like, I'm just finding more questions rather than answers with what he says. But people are definitely for sure simplifying and going to simplify this, like, he didn't love her enough, she loved him more than he did, and they're better off. He clearly wasn't into her, whatever. He would have wasted her time, blah blah blah. And it's like, well, it's not that simple. But that's where we are now, and it's going to be very interesting as how like it will evolve. But yeah, oops, I clicked what? Clicking. Been living together for a year and a half now. Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think when you live together, it's you learn the other person so much more. When you don't live together, it's so hard because you don't see them all the time. And there's pros and cons to living together, but I think one of the things is, yeah, you get to respect each other's space more, I think, because one, you're there, and that space is both of your space, and it, y- you see them more as the whole human being that they are. And yeah, like to your point, like you get used to seeing when someone needs space or needs to talk, and you have that to give too. um yeah, true, you put on a mask in social media, absolutely, yeah, yeah. Yeah. And he too, and especially being a a social dismissive avoidant, if he is, um, they definitely they don't let you in. And that's also probably, a hard one too, because if they let you in, they let you in. And it's hard for them too in that aspect. But yeah, on social media, like she said, he posted this pretty detached breakup message. And the way that he did that too was definitely disrespectful and hurtful. I think he did it for himself, not thinking about her. I don't think he did it to hurt her because he already had said all this stuff. And they left it at like, "Y- you're beautiful, you're smart, you're funny, like you'll find someone else." But yeah, and she said, okay. And then he said, okay. And she packed her bags and, she left to the airport. But I think he was just plainly inconsiderate of her. She was supposed to go to the airport. The next day, she had a baby shower, bridal shower for a friend. He knew, or technically, that her Wi-Fi doesn't work on the plane and so forth. So he broke up with her and had this whole. I don't think the breakup was planned. I think like it all came out. He was like, "Oh, I'm so tired of her like being annoyed with me when I don't deserve that," in his mind. Just like she felt like, "Oh, why is he annoyed? I don't deserve that, or I don't deserve to be treated that way." And it all just came just word vomited out. And they, talked about everything, at least as she puts it. And so I think it wasn't planned, but it was really bad timing. The post wasn't as unplanned. I think my speculation is that he did it so they would cut ties, like they wouldn't get back together. And I think it was impulsive, but it was detached. He quoted the Bible, or didn't quote the Bible, did he? No, he just kind of put out a prayer and stuff, but he didn't say anything from the heart, which is another, sign, signal, whatever, for dismissive avoidant conversation around that. But yeah, so um I think she asked, or maybe, I don't know, that he had been so vocal. Um, yeah, more than her, the host was saying. He was even more than her vocal about the engagement coming and babies and all this stuff. And I guess she also thinks that he loves her and he wanted it to work out, but at the end of the day, he doesn't think that she's right for him. And did he react out of anger? We don't know. If he didn't post it, might they still be together? She kind of says maybe. Like, who knows if the world didn't know and all that stuff. And I felt for her because not only the world, but her. He didn't even give her a moment. Maybe he thought that she already contacted her family, but her family and friends, everyone found out through his post, not from her. and that's kind of hard, and not, yeah, not great. Um, when he was saying all of that, what was she thinking? She was asked, and she said that she was worried if he really thought that about her, that, it was her, not him, kind of thing. I like how the classic, is it a movie classic? Where did that phrase come from? It's you, not me, or it's me, not you, kind of thing. Yeah, he did not say that. I mean, he did, but yeah. And she was always insecure because the action didn't line up, didn't feel his excitement to be with her to get married. And I wonder, like, this whole marriage thing, what does that mean to her? And what does it mean to him? In the attachment style coaching that, well, I don't do right now, but I could do. There's like, you go through things, and when there's repairing a relationship, if you choose to do that, one of the questions is like, you have to face what you're afraid of, as far as like, how do you define a relationship? What about a relationship, or about a commitment, or about marriage is scaring you, or bad for you, or what do you imagine, what do you expect can go wrong, all that stuff. And you have to do this kind of work. And then for her, what did she need that marriage? What does the marriage mean? Is it because she sees all her friends getting married? Is it because she thought, well, they would be more stable with each other, living together differently, or like babies? Or was it, the religious part? Like, what was she needing in terms of like, we need to get married? And what was he needing in terms of, I don't think I can marry you? Um, because it also doesn't seem, honestly, it doesn't seem like he was just stringing her along, as far as, yes, as far as marriage, but as far as being together, they were together. They were together all the time. It's not like they occasionally saw each other, So it's an interesting one. It's an interesting one. Um, yeah, he'll never say a bad thing about her, but yeah, we're done. And she said, okay, packed up, blah, blah. So it was incredibly blindsiding for her, and just like for everyone else. In a way, you could say for him too, although he did it. Um, and yeah, um, crazy and cheesy. Is the lasagna cheesy? Or, or this whole thing? Biological clock. Well, she's young. How old is she? 20 something? 26? 20? How old is she? Does Google tell us? She's 28. She's 28. I wouldn't say biological clock at that one. If she was 30, 32, sure. Like, I'm 39, talk about biological clock, ticking. Um, but yeah, 28, unless you have that kind of entourage around you that says stuff like that, and puts that pressure on you, like, oh, you're 28. If they are married and with kids, and they're like pressuring you, like, see, like, your biological clock is ticking. But that used to be like beforehand, like when I was younger, that was a thing, like, yeah, in your 20s. But now I don't think it's quite like that. Oh, his comment is cheesy. Um, yeah, yeah, 35, right. I mean, so and that's what, she was saying. She didn't need it right now or whatever either. So, yeah, it just sounds like, I don't know. Like, I have not had that thought of marriage, but maybe she wants that marriage, or that like wedding, especially because I've also not had friends that keep getting married, and we see them a lot of times in, like, so friend, they had a wedding, and so friend had a wedding, and all this stuff. So could be pressure from that. Yeah. So I don't know. I thought he thought less drama breaking up with her that way. Interesting. Why do you think that, Maria? Like, that he thought it was going to be less drama breaking up with her through a are you saying, like, what he said to her or through the social media post that he did? That's an interesting point of view. I'm very curious about that. Um, because yeah, the post, she was just freaking out about what people thought about her or about the whole thing, about also just processing the breakup itself. And that was a lot too that she had to like download and that I guess was surprising to her to hear from him. And didn't analyze the caption until later, and she was saying, yeah, saying it like a prayer, it was an easier way than saying something authentic, she said. And I thought that was said so perfectly, so beautifully. um but yeah, she was surprised that he posted it, but not how he did it. And she has spoken to him since, and he acknowledged that it wasn't the right decision for him to do that. And he has like checked in on her every few days, um, to see how she's doing and all that. And I can hear, chatter, online chatter, potentially being around like, oh, he's like just feeling guilty. Yeah, I think so. And but I don't think just feeling guilty, but yeah, I think he's feeling guilty. He feels bad. Um, I think he was invested enough in this relationship to like freak out about it too. Like, whoa, 4 years with this person. And the way that he spoke about her, and you could see how much he cared and loved her and appreciated her, and I think, he's and if the dismissive avoidant thing applies, it would be very difficult for him to like process that too. And it can go either that they just like, oh, I'm fine and everything's good, and whew, that's a weight off my shoulders. But it can also be, at least eventually, like, oh crap, like this is for real. But I think he checks in on her because like they were together for 4 years, but she told him that he doesn't need to do that. And I liked her boundary with that. I don't know how she said it, but it sounded like cha-cha. It sounded firm but nice, and not attacking him or anything, just saying, hey, like, I'll be okay. Just you don't need to. I'm okay. You don't need to worry about me. Um, and alluding to like give me some space too, which is why I said a boundary. And yeah, and landed. So she was like by herself for most of that week. It's like 2 weeks ago, I guess. And yeah, she was with her sister at one point, and then I said, I love her. I don't know what she was saying. She was talking about what she was feeling or doing after she came back. And yeah, I don't know. But I think she's awesome. I think she's so great. Um, and yeah, she didn't text him because he didn't give her the decency of a heads up. And that's like the thing, like, post whatever, okay, cool. But that is like, twisting the knife a little bit, right? Or adding another knife, not really twisting that same knife, but adding another knife in, instead of saying, hey, like, I'm going to post this. But I mean, also, if we're honest, how many of us would feel if we want to break up with someone and we break up in the heat of the moment and we see them as like someone we don't want to be with, and there's like an argument and a conversation and all this stuff, and we're selfish in that moment, how many of us would actually feel I guess, think about the other person, but also like, because he could have been angry, right? Like, no, I don't want this anymore. But sorry, my spine did not like that. What am I trying to say? I don't remember. Anyways, uh, yeah, I think it would be hard for me to, if I would break up with someone and in the heat of the moment, or I'm heated about it regardless, and I want to post about it. which is also uncomfortable now to think about that. I'm glad I'm not a celebrity and I have to do that. But I think I would even be worried to text that person because I just broke up with them. They don't want to hear from me. That's what I would think in my mind. Or I don't know. We don't know what was going on in his mind. But yeah, it was from her side. It does not look nice. It's not nice. It's not respectful and decent, true. Um, but she's forgiven him, and I think that's great. But not forgetting. And I think that's awesome. Because yeah, it was really crappy. And that's kind of it. He reached out first, like 4 or 5 days after uh, she missed a call from him, and with jet lag, they talked around 1 a.m. and he and they talked kind of like nothing happened at the end of it, but they did talk like she confronted him about the post. He apologized and admitted he could have done better. And she says that at the end of the day, he is a good guy. He is considerate of her feelings and so forth. And or like she doesn't want people to think that he's not. And um and yeah, so it's such a crazy thing though that you know they have to be so public to explain to us all of this. But at the same time, I appreciate it because it makes us question and ideally question how we handle things, how we handled in the past or current or future breakups and relationships. And are there things that, it depends on how you look at it, but are there things that I could be doing better wherever I'm at, if I'm single, if I'm taken, if I'm with somebody, if I'm living together with someone, if I'm not living together, like wherever, we are in our relationship life side of things. If we put aside the judgment that we have on either of them or how this went down, and we just kind of go in with more questions and curiosity, I think it's awesome. And oh gosh, I don't know how I'm going to segue and transition into the attachment style thing, except I'm going to just talk honestly about the dismissive avoidant because um oh boy, because I don't really know too much about her. And I just, again, and I'm not saying that he is a dismissive avoidant, but because I can, again, just imagine the chatter online and I want to put this voice out there, this potential option for anyone who's evaluating their relationship based on this and based on the things that people are saying about him or about her or about them and how this happened. That I don't know. I just want to, like I said, food for thought. That's what my channel name should be. Okay, sorry, I missed some things. No offense, but who knows what goes through their mind? In my opinion, don't come for me. uh, yeah. And then popping in, she gets to heal and look forward to a new chapter in life. Take care of her mental health. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Um, okay, so um the attachment style stuff. I think people will tune out at this point, but I'll say like the quick part. So attachment styles are no, just quick, just okay. Um, they're developed when we're young, generally. I learned attachment style theory, and specifically this, she calls it integrated attachment style theory, from Thais Gibson. She's a YouTuber. She was a counselor as well in Canada, and now she developed the school with both for people who want to work on their own healing, and that's how I found her. And I did some of her courses and so forth. And then she started teaching or like developing courses for coaches to become coaches, and that's what I did. I was in her first cohort. Yeah, just her first one. And yeah, it's awesome. And when I saw that, I'm a fearful avoidant, and I was like, whoa, I saw myself in such a different light, and things that were bothering other people about me, and I didn't understand or I didn't see it that way, and things that bothered me about me, some of them just made so much it had so much clarity around them more than any other time before. So I really got deep into this, into learning about this. But yeah, so there's four attachment styles for anyone who doesn't know. And one is the secure attachment, which I think was like 50% of the population or something, or I don't know. I forget or I don't know even the latest stats on this, but um, there's the secure attachment, and then there's the anxious attachment, and then the insecure attachments. And there are three insecure attachments. Anxious attachment, basically, anxious attachment in a very nutshell. There's more to this, but in a very nutshell, is the attachment style that um, people pleases, don't leave me, people please, crosses their own boundaries to the extreme, for the other person, which now that I say that, yeah, it sounds like her, right? And puts other people first and so forth. And it's all about the others. There's the dismissive avoidant attachment. I'll go with that one, which is kind of the opposite in a way. Only thinks about them or thinks about themselves first, and has this idea of like, you do you, I do me. No one's out for your. No one's there for each other in this world. Like, no one's going to be there for me ultimately. No one cares. They're just there for themselves, and therefore I shouldn't be there for them either. That's kind of what gets developed. And they're avoidant of conflict, of overwhelming emotion, and they're the ones that shut down, and ghost when in conflict. Whereas the anxious attachment is like, no, 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 come here, come closer, come closer. The dismissive is like, get away, get away, get away. And that these two are often in this like cycle of avoidant, anxious avoidance cycle, they call it. And what happens there, this is like a brief history of all of this. What happens there is basically they both have commitment issues, but the anxious attachment has problems with dismissing their own boundaries, and in favor of others. And therefore also like the commitment issues are like, the commitment phobia is placed on the dismissive avoidant because they are doing such a great job with not caring to enforce boundaries and to push away. Whereas the anxious just feels incapable of doing that, of like, having space. And so they lean on the dismissive avoidant to create this space that they also fear, being engulfed by, but in a different way. And they both see commitment being scary. And but it's so hard to see, and this is why I say this, because it's so hard to see, because on the surface it looks like the anxious wants the commitment, but if they would have it, they would they do their own things to kind of ensure that the commitment doesn't happen. They become overly clingy, or they do their own things to push people away. And then again, this is like such an overview, such a light overview. And then the dismissive avoidant is seen more like the one that has the commitment issues, because apparently on the surface it's so much more easy to understand what someone who's pushing someone away or pushing away from someone. Of course, they're not trying to keep that person. But what really happens is, if the anxious attached person stops leaving, stops chasing after them, the dismissive avoidant comes back. And so that's why the cycle. Then there's the fearful avoidant, which I've self-diagnosed, and also when you take her quiz online, it tells you, and it's pretty clear that it's more than just being a combination of the two, but it kind of is. You fluctuate a lot more. So if you're with an anxious attached person, you tend to be more dismissive avoidant, more like, ew, like, just give me some room, I can't breathe, or whatever. And if you're with a dismissive avoidant attachment, you tend to be more anxious, like, where are you going? Come back, don't leave me. The fearful avoidant does have a huge fear of abandonment as well, and they all do. But the way that the dismissive avoidant is, just they're unique in that they just built up such a fortress around them, unlike the other two insecure attachments. And the primary difference, I guess, with a fearful avoidant is that they have a huge trust wound. So they have a hard time believing people, and they're afraid of having the wool been pulled over their eyes. And yeah, and it's like this ambivalence of fluctuating. The other thing is what the anxious attachment style doesn't do that much is these like blow ups. So I don't know when Matt says meltdowns, if he was referring to just her crying, or she was like volatile. I can see her being volatile, but a fearful avoidant would be more volatile and would be constantly kind of going in between, like pushing away and like coming back in a way. Again, there are nuances and all this stuff. Take this with that grain of salt. That like this is just a really quick overview and also my understanding of this as well. And I have my little binder too, of this, and I'm gonna go into like specific things that I pinpointed in this story. Um, but yeah, so yeah, I just saw like fearful avoidant. They crave depth and connection, but they fear it and distrust it at the same exact time. So it's many highs and lows, and they come often from like family, or circumstances as a child where it wasn't consistent. So the anxious has the consistency of, if they cried, if they screamed enough, if they were clingy enough, they would be comforted, they would get their needs met as babies and toddlers and stuff. If a dismissive avoidant learned, no matter how hard they screamed or asked for their needs, they're not going to come to them. The parent is not going to, or the guardian is not going to be there, with food or comfort, touch, whatever, to change their diaper. I don't know. So the fearful avoidant, their development, and this is the theory of it, their development is like, well, the parents, the guardians sometimes came and sometimes they didn't come. So this attachment learned that if I scream hard enough, it's a 50-50 chance, let's say 50-50 chance that someone will like come, the my needs will get met. And that's why they can be this like swinging pendulum, unlike the other two are more like, this is my operating system. So I have here too, like dismissive avoidance may flaw find as a strategy for self-protection. And again, especially the closer and the more they care about someone, and the closer they get to someone, the more that person means to them. And I think it applies to all of it. The attachment style comes up more. So that's why it's hard to tell if you're friends with someone. It's hard sometimes to tell. Sometimes it's not, but sometimes it's hard to tell their attachment style. Or even family members. Family members have so much dynamic into them. So much more to that. Like it's a whole family systems thing, and it's a lot. But between like the romantic relationship brings this out because, well, I need to like understand a little bit more on that topic. But yeah, that's where you often see the attachment style of someone and the unhealed parts more, and you get that enacted in you more from that person, because it is like higher stakes almost. So the dismissive avoidant, so each style has, well, sorry if I'm yelling at any point. Each style has, in what we learned, like common characteristics, core wounds, common emotional patterns, um, needs in romantic relationship. And it's interesting because basically, like another thing with the dismissive is like, you take care of your needs, I take care of my needs. We never like cross that out. Like we never take care of each other's needs. Like you calm yourself first and then we can talk about it, you know, versus like, oh, you're hurt. Like, is there something I can do or whatever? Um, but yeah, the common characteristics of a dismissive avoidant, again, this is like just the surface of the whole pile. They're intellectual, so they're more intellectual than emotional. If you um again, they can say things like, I think I'm sad, or I think I'm angry, or I think something, rather than I feel angry, I feel sad, or I'm sad, or whatever. So it's intellectualizing emotion, intellectualizing their experience. Again, keeping a little bit of distance from having that emotion kind of overwhelming them. They're conflict avoidant. They're practical, grounded in their approach. Don't let their emotions take over, which is what I was saying with her. Like, I wonder, because he might have this notion of like, oh my gosh, like she's out of control. She can't control her emotions. And that's something that he values because he found that through his life, like he needed to control his emotions. It was very valuable, like, for survival, for his survival. And that's where these are coming from. It's like, it's not to hurt the other person, but it's just like, I can't help that this is what I learned keeps me safe. They're independent, like overly independent. There's like interdependence that you need to like have in relationships, but they're independent, whereas anxious attached are more dependent. And fearful avoidant fluctuate. They think about things carefully, enjoy endless learning, value security, prioritize harmony and practicality in relationships. And this thing, I used to say, like, yeah, harmony, peace. That's kind of relationship I want too. But again, with this, it's like the harmony is like no conflict. Relationships should not be in conflict. And you know we shouldn't fight, is that kind of mindset of like harmony, as far as the dismissive avoidant, like it's prioritizing it right at the top. Deeply care about autonomy and can avoid things instead of approaching them head on, and some other things. The other one, the core wounds are, I don't even know, should I go into this, because I feel like this is like the deeper dive of it, the more advanced level. But yeah, I'm unsafe, defective, trapped, helpless, incapable, weak, if vulnerable. Um, I am or will be powerless, and then why bother? Why bother? Things don't change, they're not changeable. Why bother? This person is not going to listen to me. Why bother? I actually had that years ago. I noticed it before I knew about this, but I noticed like my internal dialogue was completely like, why bother telling you how I'm feeling or why I'm hurt or whatever? Like, you're not going to care, you're not going to be able to do anything about it. There's so much, like, but why bother? And they have this like low level anxiety that can come off as irritation. So again, like with him, was he anxious about something, that he was like irritated? But that's all of us too. But yeah, so the core wounds are things that oftentimes, like, unless they're like aware of it, they don't know that's there. They think that they're safe because they avoid triggering, you know confrontation that pulls this up for them. That's why, like, fearful avoidance, also because of that chaos, they're one of the more comfortable in chaos. So they're more comfortable in like asking themselves questions and doing this work. And they're like, oh, yeah, tell me more about this. Like, oh, what are their core wounds? Let's see. I'm afraid to be betrayed. Ooh, interesting. Why? Dismissive avoidant would be like, no, I'm not. I'm not. No, there's nothing wrong. I'm okay. Um, and it's again because they don't. Oh, I don't know. But they have a harder time getting in touch with that vulnerability and with what's inside. So that's why they seek harmony and comfort. There's a big thing around creature comfort for dismissive avoidance. So if they're feeling overwhelmed, anxious, if they break up, etc., they go straight to the creature comforts, like video games, for because it's also a lot of times because of how society is. It is a lot of like men, but this is like from Thais Gibson. She literally, this is her first example. So it's like video games, drinking, eating, um, I don't, she didn't say sleep, but I imagine like just these like things that don't actually engage them in the problem and fixing, resolving, working through it, getting past it, but just avoiding it and just comforting themselves. And yeah, and we haven't seen that with him. So it was more like the other stuff, the common characteristics, and um I guess just my, having learned this at one point, like a couple of years ago, or 3 years ago, having learned this, like it's kind of a process in my mind. So I kind of spot things without like exactly these phrases, or, I may not know exactly where these are, but yeah. Um, And then their common expectations in relationships. This is where I think the thing is that I'm thinking of. My partner should always be understanding when I need space. Conflict should not be occurring in the relationship. And this is like funky because I think everyone at this point, we all know, we all hear, like, of course, people fight. And this is the tricky part because people can lie to themselves. And also, society can skew perception of what that means. So for dismissive avoidant, though, the conflict should not be occurring. It could also mean that, like, oh yeah, of course there's like fights, but there's not like big fights, and not that often, and not that big, and not that bad, and all that stuff. So that's even how they could perceive it, not like maybe acknowledging, like, yeah, of course there's some fights, but and then, which I mean, to an extent, that is true. But this is where like having an objective other person can kind of be a good gauge of, are you being fair in your assessment of a fight or what's going on internally, externally, or are you being biased? Being with a partner shouldn't mean making compromises except to keep relationship to self untouched. Makes me think of like moving in together. They moved into her place, but not so much to his place. And yeah, shouldn't keep making compromises. Sorry, shouldn't make compromises except when it's like about each other, about themselves. You do you, I do me. The partner and I should each meet our own needs and then come together without too much investment. My partner shouldn't soothe through me or emotionally rely on me. I don't know if it's the mic drop moment, but that's what he kept. That was a pattern with them, that she wanted him to soothe her, to comfort her. And he's like, no, you need space right now. I'm going to give you space to calm down and then come to me when you're rational, when you're able to intellectually communicate instead of emotionally communicate with me. Um, my partner should be the perfect match. So this is the subconscious seeking a strategy to avoid conflict or like flaw find. My level of independence shouldn't change versus healthy interdependence. And we don't know that much about them. But yeah, to me, yeah, like again, we don't know so many things. I don't know so many things, but certain things just stood out so strongly to me that I wanted to like put this context into it, because again, I don't think many people, the people who care about attachment style, and the people who care about attachment style, Matt and Rachel exist, Bachelor and all that stuff, and vice versa. So yeah. Yeah, how they handle conflict, often avoid it, will internalize their frustration, rather than express it and work through it, will sometimes pretend they agree and then do what they want anyways, may even prefer to stop talking to people altogether than other than approach conflict. This was, I remember Thais giving this anecdote from her personal situation with a friend where the friend, like if there was a conflict, they would just ghost or something, and she would reach out to them, and they would be like, well, I thought we were done because we had a conflict, like because like we disagreed or whatever. So they take this like very extreme approach to like, well, like, oh boy. Sorry. um they haven't really learned like conflict resolution that much. um so, and it sounds like with them it was this conflict resolution for them was to sort of like avoid the conflict. I don't know. I don't know. Anyways, let me read some. Whew, wow. Let me read some of these things. uh Yeah, interesting analogy. True, if it's really over, he probably won't care unless he still loves her. Sometimes when you try to soothe, it backfires. Yeah. Oh yeah. Um, what do you mean though by sometimes when you try to soothe, it backfires? Um, go into that a little bit more. And then, sorry to add a subject, nothing official yet, but I heard through the YouTube, Blakely's side has proof of, ooh, piece of news, has proof of other females coming out against Justin. Can you look into that? Oh, interesting. Is this her first piece of, did she say like, okay, fine, we're not getting that gag order or whatever. So let's fire our own shots. I had like oh, proof is here. I had what do you call that? News alert or whatever. And it's easier for me to actually like search and refresh than that's so not useful for me. I don't know how I don't think I'm doing it right. Um oh no, this is like yearbook pictures. Wait, what? Okay, this is about school. This is not current. Do you know Maria Rodriguez? Do you know who? Can you put in the link? The other Maria also asks, like, who is saying this? I don't see anything in the news right now. But yeah, I'd like to like cover that quickly too. But yeah, so this he probably won't care if it's really over too. In the meantime, as I'm looking for this too, to go back to Matt and Rachel, I don't think it's in here. I think this is more like the deep dive of avoidance and the breakup. Um, they shut down for like a few months and they convince themselves like it's better this way. So much better this way. Um, and then it like hits them like a huge wave after. So it's going to be interesting. So far though, he keeps reaching out, or he kept reaching out and making sure she was okay. They still follow each other on Instagram, and I think that's so grown up, even though yes, they're both young, but I never understood the whole idea of deleting all the photos and all the tags and unfollowing each other. Like it's to me, I just don't get it. Immature, and also you're deleting part of your own history with that. And it's also to me it screams like you're not actually dealing with that. You're not dealing with the breakup. You're not dealing with your accountability in it. You're not dealing with how you felt from them too, and what you're just trying to erase history. For what purpose though? um Yeah, I don't find anything around Blake Lively and other females. Okay. Well, it might be something. Yeah, daily dose of Dana. She received a text on her live. It might be something that's, like, just starting. Sometimes these things, like, go kind of slow. I'm not seeing anything. I'm not the best. I will admit, I'm not the best researcher, so this is funny that I got involved in all of this, but it just meant so much to me. Again, there's so much, I don't know if everyone here was, also on my other live earlier with the psychologist, and if you guys got a chance to see that psychologist's take on it, the whole internet is basically like, Who is she? What is she talking about?" Like, because someone was saying, like, it sounds like she watched a completely different or listened to a completely different voice note. And yeah, it just was, like, just crazy. Like, she was making things up. What was the point of that? What are you doing with that? Um, yeah, so I don't know. I'll make another live later if indeed there's, like, a big drop. If not, we'll talk about it tomorrow. Tomorrow I might be, most of the day I'm taking my other parakeet, so to see if they can, like, actually meet finally, because she's been in, or he's it's been in quarantine. So I am, driving 2-3 hours from here for that, and I might not be online, but yeah. What happened with Marilyn Manson? I just heard about that, like, a few days ago, and it sounded sad. It sounded like a sad story, and I wanted to watch that documentary they mentioned, but I this Blake Lively, Justin Baldwin thing is, like, it's taking over. It's so fast. It goes so fast. And then the moment that I stop, making a video, editing a video, now that I'm making lives, I understand why people make lives because it is it's a lot, and you cannot keep up with things going this fast without doing that. Um, but as soon as I stop, I'm like, okay, let me paint something, let me eat, let me, like, be in the real world for a second. So I didn't get a chance to see. I liked Marilyn Manson. I guess also I thought, like, it was an interesting thing because I do have this, like, belief that, like, what you see, if someone's, like, provocative and stuff, it's, I don't know, it's not always, don't judge a book by its cover kind of thing, and that he was a good person, a good man. Um Very interesting persona, music persona, but yeah, I'm curious. I'll maybe look into that too. But yeah, anyways, personal experience, sometimes it has an it's sometimes it starts an argument. Oh, soothing. Yeah. Interpersonal communication is tricky. We don't actually get taught how to have it. We learn how to have interpersonal communication with our families, but we will not marry into our family. We will not be with the people that we learn communication from. And now in today's world, we're going to be with people very likely from different cultures altogether. And so it's tricky. And things like triggers and stuff, you get into that, you add that on top of it. Sorry. Sorry. Um, a little parakeet tail. And I'm gonna go soon because my back, and also she wants to eat. She keeps going towards the door. Um, and Yeah, sometimes it does. Sometimes you're trying to soothe someone, and depending on how they're able to process their emotional experience in that moment, um, they might just need a little bit of that extra effort of, like, no, I'm really here for you. Or B, they need some space to be able to receive soothing. Um, and yeah, it can get complex. All the nuances. Everyone's, so nuanced. And that's like the thing with couples therapy. It's sometimes it is with like big issues and specific and like all the stuff, but sometimes it's just to learn how to have the tools to go through moments like this, where you're two complete different people experiencing something completely differently, and you have different needs. And even if you're communicating a certain need, so like if you communicate like, I need to be soothed, but one of the things with the attachment style coaching stuff, like, it's getting very specific, and um developing that relationship where you can ask, or you need to know ideally like how specifically you need to be soothed, and communicate that to your partner, and understand they might not understand the same thing from that word that you understand. um or like the other person being able to ask. But I think both people need to be at a certain level of self-awareness and willingness to be self-aware and to give grace to each other, so they can actually like hear each other out and communicate. But in the heat of the moment too, that can be very hard. And yeah, if you're a fearful avoidant, you're probably going to excel a little bit more, but you might also make it worse. If And I didn't get to the secure attachment, and they always get skipped, these secure attached people, because it's important. I don't know if it's in this little kind of in-depth breakdown, but they kind of talk about at one point, yeah, common expectations. Oh, this is the secure attachment. My partner should want to resolve things. Conflict is normal, but should not be excessive. Both parties should be able to be, which again, words, and it's how relative that word is. Excessive to a fearful avoidant is like, no, it's not excessive, but it probably is to everyone else. Or to an anxious, maybe too. To a dismissive avoidance, like excessive is just like a couple of arguments or conflict. Both parties should be able to be heard, understood, and seen in the relationship. Interdependence over dependence or independence. My partner and I can emotionally rely on each other. My Again, like highlighting with what this whole, like, there's the pattern of Matt and Rachel talking about how she gets emotional, and he just doesn't, like, you go handle that. My partner and I will work through things when we are faced with challenges. Difficult moments will happen in relationships, but we will work as a team through them. We should have a relationship to all areas of life when with each other. So, again, yes, I have my life outside of this relationship, but there's also that interdependence as well. So, yeah, is it conflict? How they handle conflict, yeah. Very much value working through the conflict. Like, they don't exacerbate it or like leave it, but they will attach like, hey, this bothered me, what did you really mean about this? Or can we talk about this? This really hurt me. And they're very in touch. And again, it goes also to Justin. Like, he sounds like he's worked really hard to be, and maybe he had a good starting foundation too in being securely attached, of like, ooh, I'm so sorry that I made you feel that way. And understanding that taking that ownership doesn't make him the bad guy, doesn't make him like a dismissive avoidant would see that like, oh no, because I didn't do that. Like, I'm not gonna say sorry for something I didn't do. And maybe even the other insecure attached styles, probably, because it's like so dangerous feeling, right? So unsafe. Um, Finished eating dinner. Awesome. But yeah, what happened with Marilyn Manson? If you can jot that down quickly. Um, and yeah, the secure attached people don't take things as personally, good at asserting their boundaries, don't mind being vulnerable, can share their feelings, communicate effectively, feel relatively comfortable working through conflict, though obviously don't seek it out. Like fearful avoidance seek out conflict. don't like to leave things unresolved. And yeah, they're fair, will be respectful in conflict oriented situations, can validate the other person's feelings and perspectives well. Want both parties to feel happy about the resolution, like the fairness, right? Like it's not me winning or you winning. It's like they want secure attached people want both or everyone to win, not in like a an impossible way, but I like they said like feel happy about the resolution. So yeah. So and she sounds a bit like this. So I wonder if she became a little bit more anxious. But I mean, or she was like a little more anxious just because she's young and because of the situation that they came in, they met through, where she said like there's this dynamic where he was this star and he was like the one that was not assertive, but had more authority. And then she was, just kind of constantly questioning if she was enough. And but she sounds very secure too. She knew this whole thing of like, it's the problem is the problem. It's not you or me. It's the problem, and we need to work together on it and stuff. And yeah, so that was like a quick dive, tiny little dive, not too deep, not too superficial onto this attachment style, but that's my theory, and I'm putting it out there about Matt and Rachel and about Matt, I guess. As far as we know right now, and through my interpretation, I see him. I have, I wish him the best too, and I have all the compassion for him as well. And I think he's suffering in his own way. I don't think, again, I don't know what's being said out there, but um, I I don't know, I'm sending him compassion and love too. And um, the other thing is like, what will they do with the breakup? Um, it's a little late, I feel like, but sorry, I'm oh here. Oh yeah, wow. It wasn't that like a long time ago with Evan Rachel Wood, or is it just more recently? I thought this happened like a long time ago, and he just got cleared of the charges. Man. But yeah, like whether they should still talk, they should go no contact. Even Tice Gibson would say, I think probably no contact just to like heal. And if they get to that friendship, or even, this, I don't think is going to happen with them. But even if it is a reconciliation, that still gives you space to reevaluate your boundaries and yourself and just you know take care of you and get to a better place, and give them both the distance to see where they went wrong, where the other person went wrong, or how they feel about things. And there's a whole process of reconciliation that people overlooked, and it just gets people in trouble. But it's a quick workbook. Maybe I'll link that below too. I'll link Tice Gibson, and I'll link that specific one because it maybe applies to a lot of people, where whether it's a romantic relationship or other relationships, um, there's like all of these questions that you need to ask yourself and ask of the other person and stuff. And it's really interesting. And I think if we would do that and we take this more seriously and not go ad hoc a lot, into it, like, well, let's dive into it and see what comes of it, and we have this false sense of trust that we know how to deal with relationships and how to deal with reconciliations and how to deal with dating, and we generally don't know so much. We know so little, and then a lot of the issues that come up are because we just don't know, and it's not necessarily our fault most of the time, especially in our generations now. you know Psychology and couple psychology, I think, is it's a newer thing, and it's not something that's being taught in school, how to communicate with people, how to, like, even at work, because actually this we learned, I didn't learn that part that much, but it also applies to workplaces, and like, how do we work together with people? And in the US, there is such a like ingrained mindset of, and I don't know if everyone here is in the US, but there's like this ingrained mindset of individuality. It's all about me, me, and mine. And it affects relationships so much. So much. Um, so yeah, I don't know. There's so much more I could talk about, and I'll talk about it as things come up. But yeah. As far as Marilyn Manson, whew, years ago, Maria says, like, oh gosh. Yeah, hopefully not. Hopefully it's not going to be that way. Yeah. Believe it or not, I for years, I don't know if anyone remembers this, but Brad Pitt and not Angelina Jolie, Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston, when they broke up or divorced, I don't even remember if they were married or not. But I remember the news reported it, and it was like 4th of July or Memorial. It was like one of those weekends. Like, it's going to ruin everyone's holiday weekend. That's how they presented it. And at that point I was like, no, I'm not interested in tabloids anymore. I'm not interested in all these things. Like, um, and so it's interesting because I mean that was years ago. But this, and of course, like here and there, I got with The Bachelor, I would watch it, and you would get into that, and that's how I found out about Dave Neal, and he's awesome if you guys haven't checked him out. But yeah, generally, like, I haven't been this invested as I am in Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni. Please, I haven't been this invested in anything like this, so yeah, I didn't know about this. I'm sorry. Maria says it was in Variety a few days ago and he was cleared. But yeah, it was like years ago that this started. And hopefully it's not going to be that way. It seems like it's going light speed. I'm surprised that the trial was set for a year from now, a year and a month almost, almost a little bit more. I'm surprised because it's going so light speed with all the stuff that's come out already. I don't know if I said this on a video. I think I was just talking yesterday with Nelson. Like, is it just like logistics? You know how court dates are set, or um, is it so all of this dies down in theory, and so like rulings and things can be more objective. Um, But imagine what it costs both of them, if even just like going a whole year, but if it goes like even more than a year, because then the trial starts, and how long will that take? And then how long to rebuild the image, and how much will we know and don't know from that trial if it's closed and all this stuff. I guess it can take this long time. Um, yeah. I'm glad for Marilyn Manson though. That's sad though. That's sad. Anyways, well, thank you guys for joining. I'm going to go get some food for the little parakeet here and put that hot, like, ice pack or whatever on my back too. And yeah, yeah, I'm happy for him too, Maria. And thank you guys for joining and for like participating. This was so fun. I love your questions and food for thoughts. And see you in the next one, and have a wonderful day. And I partially want a little, like, let's take a day of break. Not us, but can they give us a break with the Justin Baldoni thing? I'm at the point where I just one day. Just keep your news until, like, what is it? Today's Wednesday. I guess I don't know. Do we want Friday to, maybe, I don't know. Anyways, have a great night, and if nothing else like breaks out, breaking news, I'll see you guys tomorrow or Friday or something. Bye. Have a good night. Yeah. Bye.